All right. Episode 2. 2 weeks in a row here. We did it.
Yeah, we're gonna break some sort of record.
Well, I mean, it's not. So to peel back the fourth wall, earlier this morning, you had texted the group and it was just like, are we going to be talking about how maybe this team is proving all the doubters wrong, or is it a big dose of reality?
Yeah, that dose
And
that dose was in like I would say it weighed about a ton. It was a ton of a 1 ton dose of 6 goals of a complete and utter ass kicking.
well, it's all Carter Hart's fault,
Yep,
obviously, right?
I
I didn't
do
look at
like.
the heat. I
Good.
good. I didn't look at the heat map for the shots, but I'm assuming it was a lot of high danger chances.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch. I was working, so I didn't get to watch. Um, uh, whoa, whoa. I didn't get to watch like very much of it, but I kept seeing the goals because they were fast and furious in the second period. I mean, the first goal he had no chance on. The Zaka goal, you'd like to have back, but the third and fourth ones like he had zippo chance on. I mean, the Bruins are the best team in the league, and the Flyers are not. So
Well, no, you're just being negative.
yeah, let's just say they're good enough to be in the top 32 of the NHL.
They're definitely a hockey team.
Yes, they're an NHL team. I don't know if the Coyotes are an NHL team. The Blackhawks definitely are not an NHL team, but the Flyers are just not an ultra good one.
I I I struggle, right? Because like this is where I felt like exactly what we were talking about last week, which is like the identity is better. I think that obviously the coaching is better, right? Players are playing more responsible. A breakout actually looks like a breakout now. um, but they're stuck in no man's land. And I feel like in sports, not the NFL, because the NFL, the cap, we've talked about it many times, it's not real. But when you're talking about basketball and hockey, no man's land is a kind of the worst place to be, which is like you're in the hunt, but not. Did that come through?
No, I didn't hear it.
Okay. They're stuck in no man's land where they're like in the hunt, but not really. And I feel like that's the worst place to be in these winter sports.
Well, you would think, and when you hear Torts talk even after all the wins, and the media is trying to pump up, oh, you're only 5 points out or whatever it is, but he knows where they are. He knows that of the 7 of 8, with the 7 wins in 8 games, you have the Sharks who stink, the Kings who are okay but not great, the Ducks aren't an NHL team, the Coyotes aren't an NHL team. They got waxed by one of the better teams in the league in the Leafs. The Sabres are a much better team, but they're just up and coming. Um, and the Capitals, they played really well. That Wednesday game at home, they played really, really well. And Hart really stole the game the other night in Washington. But besides that, I mean, the Caps are getting guys back, so they're kind of like they're in an awkward position. So like there's reasons that have gone into them winning 7 of 8, and then you play the best team in the league, and you got absolutely waxed. And if you look at the stat sheet, which I'm not going to, but I know the shots wasn't like a crazy shot game where they outshot them like 52-18 or something like that. It wasn't that bad, but it was just like the Bruins just controlled the play, and they just capitalized on every single mistake the Flyers made. And
shot totals can also be misleading.
What's that?
Shot totals can also be misleading. If you're holding for a good shot, you might not have a high total, but you have a good chance.
Yeah. No, I bet you possession time was 60-40 Boston, and it's probably that close because it was 6-0 in the third. So, yeah, it just it wasn't close. But you know what? I mean, that's fine. If anyone was realistically expecting them to come into Boston and win, especially after they just lost their first home game in regulation, which is insane, you're sorely mistaken. But the thing is, much like after they got waxed by the Leafs, although that was a closer game, they have the Ducks, they have the Blackhawks, they have the Red Wings, who are really struggling, both at home. And then you're in Detroit, and then you have the Jets, who are pretty good. Kings that you've already beaten. Then you're at Minnesota, at Winnipeg. So odds are they probably win the next two games. They'll probably win tomorrow night because they've already beaten the Ducks, and the Ducks are terrible, and they're going to be really pissed off about today's game. And they probably come out and wax the Ducks tomorrow. And then they beat the Hawks, and it's they'll have won 9 of 11. And it's still a really good run. And then if they go to Detroit and win that game, even though Detroit's better, they've struggled mightily and of late. So if they win that one, then again, the stupid pundits are going to be talking about playoffs again. It's like they're not in that spot, but they're good enough that they can beat these bottom dwelling teams. But after they host the Kings, then you're going to get more reality at Minnesota, at the Jets, Islanders, Oilers, Predators, home with the Kraken, the Canucks stink, but at Calgary, at Edmonton, there's a lot of losses there.
There should be.
Yeah, should be. And I mean, and there needs to be. What you want is you don't want the 6-0. You don't want the 6-0 loss. You want, the 6-5 loss at the Hurricanes. You want the 4-3 loss at the Leafs, where they fight to the end and they almost tie it up, but they come up just short. That's what you want.
Yeah, and as when the season got so, Charlie O'Connor, I believe, is reporting that Chuck Fletcher is not on the hot seat because they don't look like the disaster they did when they dumped 10 in a row.
Well, yeah, he said that. I'll pull up his exact tweets.
While you're doing that, while you're looking for the exact quote, the idea is that it doesn't look like the dumpster fire because they've beat up on some of these other teams that are at the bottom of the league. And the front office isn't as upset with Chuck because the team doesn't look to be in such disarray. Something.
Yeah. So, someone had tweeted at him saying this game finally going to get Fletcher canned, and he said it's going to take a lot more than one bad loss after a stretch of 7 wins in 8 games to get GM fired. And then someone replied, is this just a fan fantasy, or is his job really in question at the upper level management? And Charlie responded, I believe and have reported this, that Fletcher was legitimately on the hot seat in December after that 10-game losing streak. His job security wasn't looking strong. But since then, the Flyers have avoided any embarrassing skids and have won 7 of the last 9. So, yeah. And then someone brought up the idea of a random hot or cold streak for a few weeks in the middle of a season can tell you much more about how the GM is performing at his job. Strikes me as very, very dumb. And his response, I think it's more, I think ownership was starting to come around on the idea of a full pivot to a rebuild mentality was necessary, and I don't think Fletcher would be executing on a true rebuild. The potential second half improvement plays into ownership's hope that this isn't actually needed. So that's
reality.
That's what's like. It's hard to. I mean, I can never fully watch a game and root for them to lose. I can't. Like, it's just that's not in my blood. It's not in my DNA to do that. But it's tough because the more they win, the more likely it is Chuck keeps his job. Do they need a full rebuild? Like, I mean, I keep going back and forth. Like, if you have pieces, I mean, they're all bottom level pieces, but like, if you
they have some mid players, though. I mean, like, it's not fair that they're all bottom level, right? Like, they've got some top 6 players, just not top 3 players.
Yeah, no, and like Bundy was talking about Konechny on the Snow the Goalie podcast, and he said how Konechny is not a first line player on a cup cup winning team, which I would disagree with. Is on a cup winning team, is he one of the 3 best forwards? No, but can he be on the first line with 2 other really good players? Yes, he can be a first line winger. So in essence, yes, he can be a first line winger on a cup winning team. So yes, I TK is your first line wing. But outside of that, you don't have a first line center because by the time Coots comes back, you have no idea what he's going to look like. You don't know about the back, if it's even going to hold up. So you don't like. So in my opinion, he's your second line center going forward until he proves otherwise. And that's why you need to. And we've talked about it in the past. Like they have too much talent. And to just trade everyone away, like make that cupboard barren. Like the Oilers had no one, and they make 2 of the best, 2 top 5 players, and they've gotten to the second round twice in McDavid's 8 years. They may miss the playoffs this year. Like there's no guarantee of that. If the Oilers were smart, they'd trade Draisaitl and get an absolute haul for him because you don't need 2 of those guys. But you can get a generational player and still not win a cup. I mean, look at the Leafs. They have Matthews. How many times have they been out of the first round? Zip.
Yeah, it's like it's not a guarantee because you need a roster, right? You need depth. You can't win without it. And I think that's what we look at, and I'm guilty of it to a certain extent, right? Like you look at Patrick Kane or Crosby or Mac. You look at Tampa, right? You look at their high-end guys, and you don't give enough credit to that next line. Also, the bottom 6 and the defenders, right? You look at McCarr and Hedman. Yeah, those guys are obviously amazing players, right? But you still need your second pair. You still need a third pair. Those guys do need to rest at some point. So is it a guarantee? No, we've seen it, right? We've seen great guys struggle because their teams are hamstrung. And some of that I would say is like just poor drafting, right? Edmonton has had a lot of cracks at getting great talent and have fallen on their faces. And then when it happened, they didn't really have the rest of their roster. Now they're hamstrung with cap, right? Like it's tough to build a full roster when you've got 2 guys each making like what, 10 and 9 million? Is it Draisaitl a $9 million or $8 million player?
I think it's more than that. Let's see. Yeah.
So they have 2 $10 million players, if that's the case.
Oh yeah.
So once you get into that, right, 2 $10 million players, if you don't have those other pieces, and Toronto's in a similar spot,
right.
It's tough to fill
So McDavid makes 12.5, and Draisaitl's only 8.5, which is crazy.
So 20. We're in the same thing though. Like I was saying 10 for McDavid and 8, and you were saying 10 and 10. We're still at 20.
Yeah,
If it's
there's
12 and
still
8.
two guys, both forwards, are taking up literally a quarter of your cap. Two guys.
But you do need, you might not need Connor McDavid, but you do need two high-end guys at least. Like they don't have to be McDavid and Draisaitl, but you do need those level guys. It's not a guarantee, but it's tough to win without them.
Yeah, no, and that's what they're missing. They have a bunch of other pieces. And most importantly, this team needs is a first pair defenseman. A lot of teams can see. A lot of teams are saying that, but they, it's time. It's time for Provorov to move on. We don't know when that's going to happen, but they have, what is it, 23 million in on their D. Bring it up now.
They have a lot. They don't have a big payday guy, but they have a lot of guys in that 6.5 range.
Yeah. So
Sanheim, Risto, Provi.
Yeah. So between for the top four guys, you're at. All right. Well, we'll just go to next year because that's when Sanheim's deal kicks in. I still can't believe they signed Sanheim to an 8-year deal, but so between Provorov and Sanheim, you're at 13 million. So next year, Provorov, Ristolainen, D'Angelo, and Sanheim will be costing you 23 million. 4 guys.
It's a lot to not have a 1A. Like that's. It's just these decisions that you make when you're right. Like if we lose them, what are we going to do? And then you pay guys, and then you end up kind of with like that. The same thing with the rest of the team. Not good enough, not bad, right? No one is saying any of these guys are bad, but not good at your whole unit as a unit. If you want to be in that next level, you need the guy.
Yeah. They need a guy to really carry the load, and they don't have that. Sanheim is a good second pair D. I still think him and Risto are a solid second pair D. And York is, even though he's not a top pair defenseman, he can play. If there's a top pair D, he can easily play with him and then run the power play. But how do you get said defenseman? So ironically, Torts compared Cam York to his old defenseman Dan Boyle in Tampa, and if he becomes Dan Boyle,
you're in good shape. You're in good shape.
Torts won a cup with Dan Boyle playing in the first in the first pair. So yeah, it's I'm A-okay with that.
Yeah, but right, and then it's what does the. So if we're not going full right, tear it down to the studs, which I think is just not going to happen. They're not going to look up and down the roster and trade everybody. So assuming that's not the case, right? You've got the development of Gauthier, right? How long does that take? I think you're on the long end where you say next year he returns to college.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a one and done. We'll see.
Yeah, I think
he's following a Farabee.
Yeah, we'll see, but I think if he's one and done, he'll be a Phantom. He won't be a Flyer next year.
But we can still see the develop. Like in terms of like our area, the development changes, right? Like,
yep.
So I think he'll be one and done. We'll see. So you're looking at the development there. You're looking at what happens with if Forster can, get more ice time. He's had some health issues, some injuries. Um, Still has a hell of a shot, right? He's playing well. I think the last couple of weeks in Lehigh. So you've got that, but there's not this pipeline of guys to fill out rosters either that you think that you might have a blue chip other than maybe Gauthier.
Yeah,
A
I mean
blue chip
Gauthier is
guy.
your only blue chipper. I mean, they have that Swedish defenseman. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. That they're high on, but I mean he's tops out as a second pair of D. But Tyson Forrester, like, I mean, if he becomes an NHL player, you're talking a third line player, and they already have plenty of those guys.
That's what they've done a great job at drafting, right? Like I'm not even saying they've been bad at drafting. They've drafted a lot of guys who slot as like bottom six, maybe, depending on the roster chemistry, a low end top six. Like it's a lot of those kind of guys. And Bobby Brink, right? We're looking at another guy who's battled some injuries, had a decent collegiate career.
Yeah,
But
he's smallish, but again, his ceiling is. I think his NHL ceiling is a third liner, or, a guy that could play in the second line with two really good line mates. But I think he's a third line guy. Like we talked about before, they need a 1C and they need a first line wing, and what I foresee happening is they're going to clear out as much cap space as possible. It wouldn't surprise me if D'Angelo got dealt. He does not have a no trade clause. He hasn't had any issues so far this year. He only has one more year left. You might be able to get a second round pick for him. And then next year, I still think even if they were to deal D'Angelo, which I honestly am not sure if they do, I think no matter what Provorov's done, because it's there's too much smoke out there, so you could potentially be seeing both those guys getting moved, and if that happens, you're talking about there's a lot of openings and a ton of cap space, and I could see them, signing a guy. I mean, there's not the forwards out there aren't like that great, free agent wise, which I like. It gives another year for a guy like Morgan Frost to, you're not going to be a playoff team next year.
And it helps those guys in their development, right? Because the expectations aren't as strong. They can figure out who they are. With some look, I didn't think Torts was the right hire for where the team was, and I mean that I just think that they'd have been better off being worse, and we disagree, right? Like that's fine. And I just when he was hired, I said like you're going to expect a middle of the first pick, and but it is good for these guys in their development, right? He's a good coach for that, teaching them the right ways to play and kind of, with some grit and whatnot. So he's good in terms of that. And I just thought it wasn't about his X's and O's or even his, I love no iPads on the bench. But I just think overall it will help in their development as far as playing right, but losing, and then not having to worry about not having the stress of competing.
Yeah, I think
Frost is on the long-term development, That's just the way it is.
I think he's the only thing that I think that I'm maybe not the biggest fan of is how hard on Hayes he was. But really in reality, that's really been it. I mean, if you look at the Washington game the other night, on the lone goal, on Ovechkin's goal, Frost, I don't know what Lord's name he was thinking when he backhands the puck. He could have just picked the puck up, skated behind the net, and there's no goal. There's no chance. There's no nothing. They can exit the zone. Holy crap! Look who it is. The Phillies are months away, dude.
You saw the game today, right?
What game?
They were late, just like I was late today. My headphones
No,
snapped because
you have to show up in order to be late. But so Frost has that insanely stupid turnover right to the greatest goal scorer in NHL history, and he doesn't bench him. And you saw like he worked his way through it, and he helped set up the one goal, and he played great the second half of the game. And earlier in the year, maybe he gets benched. Who knows? But younger Torts 6 years ago definitely benches him, and then he's probably up in the press box the next night. So Torts is definitely changed. So I've liked everything that he's done. It's you want these guys learning the right way to play. It's difficult if you look at the core between Sanheim and Provorov and Konechny and everyone and even Hart now, like they know a lot. All they know is a lot of losing, and teams that were just dumpster fires and inner squabbling and just a mess. And he's come in and cleaned all that up. And that there's no more half-assing it. There's accountability, and the young guys needed that more than anything, just to help them with their growth and just for them to understand that it's not acceptable. What happened in the past is not acceptable. It's not going to be accepted going forward. I think that's more important than 2 more ping pong balls to get a chance at Bedard, of which they weren't going to get anyway because NHL won't.
They weren't going to get Bedard. I never thought that was going to happen. It's nice. It's like the dreams of if I had Mega Millions tickets.
Did anyone hit, by the way?
Someone in Maine.
Yeah, first ever Maine hit.
Fuck Maine.
Knew I should have drove up to Maine to get tickets.
I think you can buy the state of Maine for $1 billion.
Yeah, but you ain't getting $1 billion. You're getting like 600 million.
700 and then taxes. I'll be okay. I'll cry into my pile of cash if that's the case. Right?
Yeah, I think it was like $433 million after taxes
I'll
and
take
everything.
It. I think I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, I'll be Scrooge McDuck. Like,
so, I never thought that it was nice to wish, it was nice to dream, but I never thought that was the case. But there are really, we'll see when there's these years where they swear it's a deep draft, and then when development takes place, it doesn't look the same. But this is supposedly a good draft. So just being in that top 7-ish was a good place to be in terms of the talent coming out.
Yeah, so right now, again, it's kind of way too early to be discussing this, but I think it's going to be in
it's never too early.
So right now they're drafting 9th. Their draft position is 9th. But if you really look at the standings, I hate the NHL hockey reference. God damn it.
Oh, go to Tankathon.
Go to what?
Tankathon.
Tankathon?
Yeah. Come on, man. You do a hockey show, you don't know what Tankathon is?
A lottery simulator.
This is what our hopes and dreams have been on.
Yeah.
So Montreal, so 6 through 9 is really separated by what? A win?
Yeah. That it's gonna be nauseating to see how frequently that deck shuffles.
Oh yeah.
And if Ottawa ends up getting Bedard, I'm gonna be really annoyed because they have so many high-end Forwards.
Yeah. Kachuk, Stutzel. You got some good players.
Claude.
Just
Can't
doesn't seem
forget
to.
about Claude.
I mean, I'm just talking, like guys that have come through their draft. So another team, right? High draft picks doesn't always work out, but you need them.
Yeah,
They feel like they're on the brink, and then it just doesn't click over to the next gear.
Yeah, and it's funny. We're like, so I was talking about how like you need to have a roster. Like you need if you get Bedard, like you have to have some players from to actually play with. So I'm like looking at Chicago because Chicago has the greatest odds right now at 18.5. And if you look at their roster, so I'm excluding Kane and Taves for obvious reasons.
Free agents. Yeah, they're going to be free agents.
Well, free agents. Well, there's actually talk that because Kane is injured, and there's talk that they may sit him and then sign a 1-year deal so that they can deal him next year. So if you eliminate Kane and Taves, these are the amount of NHL quality players they have up front. They have Anthesio, however the hell you say his name, Max Domi. Tyler Radish will be an NHL level defenseman, 4 rather. So that's 3. Outside of your fourth liners, which are whatever. You have Seth Jones. You have 1D. You have 2D. That's it. Your goalies stink, and they don't really have anyone else. Like
Seth Jones is
that's
still
why
in the
they're
league.
bad.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like, so who's going to come in and play with?
Well, the idea would be, right, he comes in and then they're still going to have a top pick the following year because, like, even as a rookie with that, right, as a rookie, even with a halfway decent roster, it's a lot to ask for him to come in and contribute right away, even if he looks amazing. And then, so you're going to probably end up with 2, maybe 3 years, maybe 2 years of top 3 to 5. And then in the third year, maybe it is like an 8th or 9th pick, and then it clicks over, right? Like that's probably what you'd be looking at when you're in that bottom 3, the teams that are most likely to get that number 1 pick.
It's just stripping the NHL roster is just I wouldn't be able to do that. I would never sign on for that if I was a general manager. I could never do that. Because
you're committing 8 years. You're probably committing 8 years if you do that.
That's like trading a guy like the Brinkhead. Like
I'm all for admitting that you're not ready to compete. Like they're not ready to compete. They're not ready to compete even with getting an all-world player. So like I'm all for like admitting where you are. But the issue is you also have to be honest, right? Like if you're going to go with that level of rebuild, it's a long haul. Guys take, for the non-Bedards of the world, you're talking about a commitment of one player, 1 pick, 3 years before they might be in the league, before you actually learn what you have. Another 2 before they might slot where you're hoping they go.
Yeah,
this isn't the NFL.
Yeah, if it's one thing if you have like a really good defenseman. Well, defense is a little different because you aren't training defensemen generally. But like, let's say he's 29 years old, 30 years old. Like, you're not like it's like having a shitty baseball team having an excellent closer. There's no need. Deal him, get draft capital, get prospects for him. Build your team up. But you have a 24-year-old goal scorer that scores 40 every year. Trading him, I get, like, makes you even that much worse, but like you need other good players. Like the Flyers to trade Konechny. Like you then have to replace him. And what you're going to get for him isn't going to be what isn't going to replace him. I mean, it could eventually, like you have a 1 in 8 shot of him actually replacing him in 4 years. It just doesn't make sense for where the Flyers are. Again, if you're the Coyotes, makes sense. But like that would have been like the Coyotes trading off Clayton Keller, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, how do they find their way to the next gear? Like, that's really the question. That's what's at the heart of all of it. Sorry, Chris, are we boring you?
No, you're fine. I was still in shot that Seth Jones was in the league.
That was in the league?
He was still in the league.
Why?
Isn't he old?
Seth Jones?
No. He's getting paid a lot of money. He ain't
9.5,
going anywhere.
Baby. He's 28. He's 12 years younger than me.
All right. Who's the defenseman? I feel like it's the same thing. He was like disbarred from his family or something. He disowned them, and he ended up going bankrupt. He was a Blue Jacket. I can't think of his name. He was a defenseman. Oh, and by the way, I did that tankathon.
Oh, you're talking about Jack Johnson?
Maybe.
Yes, Jack Johnson. Yeah, because that was a lot of the talk last year. It was great for him to win the cup with Colorado last year. With all the issues that he had. Yeah, you're talking about Jack Johnson. Yeah.
Yes. I just looked it up.
Yeah, he's like 40 billion years old.
Hold on, look. We got the number 1 pick.
Yeah, how many times did it take you to get there?
Twice.
That's not bad. 50%. Yeah. We have a 50% chance to get our 5% odds of winning Bedard.
Right. And
happens
the first,
every time.
And the first time I did it was Chicago. I was like, I got to do this again. I think I would have threw my computer if it was Pittsburgh.
To the point, and that's where everybody talks about, I think that's how we end up in this conversation constantly about stripping it down, tanking, because you are stuck in this area where you're not good enough to compete, not bad enough to get a great player in the draft. You might get a really good one, and you might get someone that overperforms, but the odds of you getting a great player when you get out of the top 5 gets less and less. It's true in every sport, right? But so then what do you do? How do you take this step from this middling team to the next level? How do you get there? Because free agency is not a real path either. If it were the 90s, that's what they would do.
See, what's tough is if you trade Provorov, you get prospects back, you're in a position where, and depending on where you end up draft-wise, you can, let's say, a defenseman that they were rumored to trade for last year, Matt Dumba, is a UFA. Especially if Chuck's still here. It wouldn't surprise me if
another old Fletcher player.
Yeah. But Matt Dumba's good. And is he going to cost you 9? If Seth Jones got 9 and Darnell Nurse got 9, Matt Dumba's probably getting you 9. Or is probably getting 9 or even 10 because the market's not that great. So, but it's are we really locking on Matt Dumba? But he's not blocking anyone, Yeah,
but it's the same thing with your connecting part, right? Where it's you're dumping that contract, you're getting prospects back, you've got to replace them. You're replacing Provorov with a guy who's potentially $2+ million more than he costs. For how much better of a player?
Well, I mean, let's go. Let's look it up.
Because that's what free agency does. Guys get overpaid. That's just the way it works. And then I'll be a broken record again. In terms of the way it works with the salary cap and when because guys don't really move all that much, it jacks up guys like above their pay grade, and then other guys max out. So like nobody could pay McDavid really more than 12. He's probably worth more than 12.
Oh God, yeah. If I remember right, he turned one of the offers was like 13.5 or 14. And I think he came down to 12.5. Came down to 12.5. What a good guy.
Yeah, but I mean, he's what, 2 points a game right now?
Oh, it's absurd. He's in my eyes, he's already clinched the Hart Trophy.
Yeah. But it comes to this thing where there's all this stagnation. We were just talking about, in order to get to enter a rebuild, you're talking about a 6 to 8 year, if you do everything right. But a championship window for a lot of teams, there's some teams where it's only a year, but for a lot of teams, it's close to a decade too. And that's what we're looking at is a turnover time of not very long, overpaying of guys not worth it, because you don't have a choice. And then there's one way to get better, and that's really through the draft, because free agents always get overpaid.
I mean, the other way is you need to have a good GM, which we need to trade for one.
Siserman on the block.
So that he then can make hockey trades. That's another way to get better. Trading a guy like Provorov, it's twofold. One, you're not trading him because he's a bad player. He's a good player who hasn't developed into what you hoped he would. And then, he just needs a change of scenery, and the Flyers need a change of scenery from him. So, is it one of those things where you trade problem for problem? Now, I don't know who the other problem is. It could be a forward, may not be a defenseman for another team that is struggling, along those lines. And, maybe you fill a hole that way. You're not going to get a first-line center for Provorov, but you could get a guy in his similar age group that's maybe underperforming and isn't happy. He's not happy with the team. Team isn't happy with him. Again, problem for problem. That's where you might be able to find, some help that can fill that.
But we talk about change of scenery. Why can't we get a change of scenery with Fletcher? I'm tired of the change of scenery talk with these players. We clearly know that Chuck Fletcher's the issue. Why is there no change of scenery for him? I like Provorov. I don't want to see him go unless we can get a stellar package for him. Like you said, we need a GM who can draft. You look at the Penguins draft in 04 and 05. It was Crosby, Malkin, and Chris Letang. That core's still together.
Yeah, that was some great scouting. They found a diamond in the rough with Crosby.
No, but Malkin. All right, but they found Chris Letang in the second round. I'm just saying stuff like that. They need a tank. But I'm saying stuff like that. Yeah, I get the getting Malkin and Crosby thing. But I'm like, they found Chris Letang. Who was the other guy with the big nose who ended up becoming a Flyer? He was a Penguin.
Big nose becoming a Flyer.
He was a
You're
Penguin.
really breaking it down there, Chris.
He started the fight. I can't forget. I forget
the fight.
In the playoffs.
You're not talking about Niskanen, right?
No. This is when we played No, it's when we played the Penguins. I can't think of his name.
Asham?
No, not Aaron Asham. No, he played on the Penguins, then he came to the Flyers. It wasn't the other way around.
Oh, Talbot?
Yeah, Max Talbot.
What about him?
I'm saying those are just serviceable players that
Flyers have plenty of those.
They don't have the Crosbys or the Malkins.
Yep, that's
or the Letangs.
Or the Letangs.
One would say the Letang thing is actually a greater need because have the goalie. If you build out, especially with a coach that preaches defense like this, you can become a better hockey team quicker with that, and it's easier to get forwards because there's just more of them.
I just hate the change of scenery.
It's
It
true.
worked for Tippett, right? It worked for Tippett. He's obviously much improved in a different place.
Yeah, he's going to be a 25 to the way it looks right now. He's going to be your second line 25 to 30 goal scorer every year. Just book it, and he's a guy that's he's fast. Last Wednesday against the Caps, he was Owen Trippett, getting his feet moving and drawing the penalties. That trade looks better, and yet you have your first. They got a first for him, right? Yeah,
next year. Year.
So
and Florida looks like it's on. We'll see what that hold. If they look that first next year might actually be much better than we thought.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, what would be funny is if Florida actually ended up drafting higher than the Flyers this year. Actually, no, Florida won't be because they don't have their first round pick. Well, yeah, because that's actually Go to the Tankathon. Montreal has their first round pick. That's right. That's a team that could be scary because they could have. Right now, they have 2 top 10 picks,
and they're they're starting to go on the upswing. So we'll see. But that's where's that, and that's the frustration, right? And that's why Chuck. To Chris's point, there's the frustration. Is I understand giving up the picks. In some cases to move salary, but it's not like they moved salary to actually fundamentally improve the roster. So the reality is there isn't a strategy. It just feels like there's no strategy.
Yeah. Last year, if you were committed to a rebuild, you could have got a first round pick for Risto. They got the reason why Montreal has a first round pick is because they got it for Ben Sherratt, who's basically a left-handed wrist alignment. So, again, if you're talking about a rebuild, could have traded Sanheim. He only had 1 year left. He was an RFA, so he was under team control. You could have got a first plus for Sanheim because he was only making he only makes 4, I think. Or maybe he's 5.
Well, that's
he's 4.6. He's 4.65. He was under team control as an RFA. You could have got a first round plus to a contender last year.
And that's the part that it just feels like we know how you have to get better. There isn't a strategy for, even if you're not I'm not saying you have to go in and throw in the towel and trade everybody. But at least the strategy. And we've done this too scared to make a big move. And I don't know,
So you're saying we should have a strategy.
Just one.
A strategy, even if it's a bad one, at least have a strategy.
Speak to me. Tell me what it is your plan is. That's all I'm asking for. I'm a cheap date in that regard.
Yeah, got to have one first.
Even if it's a bad one, at least it's something.
That's why, I didn't agree with it, with the whole aggressive retooling, and then they were going to sign Johnny.
And then they did nothing.
I didn't think that was the way to go, but it was at least a plan, and I could
congratulations
see a reason for it. I could see a reason to do it. It would be short-term gain for not a lot of, and still have a lot of pain, but at least it would be a little more excitement. But
try,
something. But nope, can't have that. Not the guy that wants to come here. No. All right.
Please don't get me started. The only good thing that came out of it is I just got a tweet that says the Cowboys' first drive. Incompletion, 13 seconds off the clock.
Good clock management.
No.
It's quality quarterbacking.
You want to talk about clock management? That Miami game the other day was
That game was just a clusterfuck. The whole game, like it was absurd.
Both sides.
I watched. Yeah, I know. I watched the first, a little bit of the first quarter before I left work, and I was listening to it on my way home, and like it was just.
It sounded like it would be 38-0.
Yeah,
Buffalo. And then it wasn't. Oh, but yeah, like the whole Johnny Gaudreau thing. Just I still have a bad taste in my mouth. At least call him. Say hey.
Well, I mean, why call a guy if you have zero intention of signing him?
Because maybe I'll use the famous words. He'll take a hometown discount.
Even if he did, it would have to be like $1 million.
Yeah, there's no way.
You can cut somebody. I don't know. I just
because you know what? Then we'd be trading. Then they'd be trading like who the hell they had.
No, you call the guy.
They would have had to trade Sam. They would have had to trade Konechny for like a fucking box of condoms.
No, you call the guy. You call the
Yeah.
guy across the street and ask him how he manipulates the NFL salary. The NFL
Because it's not a real salary cap.
Because there's no real salary cap in the NHL. Put
Yeah.
somebody on IR. Put somebody on IR.
No, in the NHL, like that long-term injury reserve is not like people think that's just a long-term solution. It's not, because all right, so
You still have to have that money until he fails the physical, right? Like,
well, no, it's not even that. When the regular season starts, he has to, like, those players have to be on the roster for night one, and then they can be put in. But you have to be cap compliant, so you can't go like $20 million over the cap.
Somebody will figure it out eventually.
well, I mean, at some point, something's going to have to give. It's just that we're in this place because GMs had to be saved from themselves, but something will have to give. Some of it is the guaranteed contracts are just too long.
Yeah,
in terms of term,
I think what might happen in the future, you're still going to have a hard cap, but I think what's going to happen is I think they'll use baseball and
little luxury tax.
Yeah, luxury tax. That's where I think it'll go. They're not going to go. They're not going to venture away from the hard cap, but I think you might get a luxury tax. Because these teams, like the Flyers, but more like the Rangers and Penguins and Lightning, like if they want to go get those players want to come. Like, you know, if they're willing to, you know, pay the penalty. Why shouldn't they be able to?
Pittsburgh will be interesting though when what's going to happen with when the end of the career finally comes for you know, their stars.
Yeah, they're all locked in for 4 or 5 more years.
Eventually, they will not play hockey anymore. Is all I'm saying. You know, like, and it will be interesting as far as that franchise. Will they be gifted another
player?
Well, yeah. Will the lineage continue?
I think it's hard to put a luxury tax on hockey or something because there's only 40 games played at home. So any revenue that you make from tickets, as opposed to 80 games that are played, you know, at home for baseball, it's a hard sell. I don't know how they would do it.
Any Northeastern team could justify the spending. Your Phillies, your Rangers, your Colorado,
the Leafs.
Yeah,
the Leafs
Toronto.
literally just the Leafs so that they could leave a few hours early for their away game after Christmas. They literally took a pile of hundreds, and just let like $100,000 just lit it the fuck on fire. They didn't care, so that they could leave early. That's how much they don't give a shit. Like they don't like that's pocket change. You find that in a couch. So
yeah, like Detroit, like all those teams
real quick.
all those teams that we historically think of as being like good teams, they all would I would believe be fine with a luxury tax because they have built-in fan bases. They're going to sell tickets, and yeah, it's 40 versus 80, but you're probably every one of those 40 for those Northeastern teams are having a sellout, where baseball, the beginning of the season, ticket sales aren't as strong.
No. Phillies might be pretty decent this year, but
just possibly. I hope they should sell a lot of tickets.
yeah, no $55 a month specials this year.
No $25, no pass fees, or no the online fees that they get waived.
Yeah.
That will not be happening this year.
Nope. That's the only part that sucks about having a good team and trying to get tickets is excruciatingly hard.
It really does, because, like I said, it annoyed me. Now it's really going to annoy me because, I went to like 10 games last year, and now if I want to go to 10 games, it's those 10 games is going to probably cost me $2,000 between parking, food, and
I looked at it. I looked at partial when they listed them, and I was just doing it for possibly playoff tickets, but it was a little bit more than I wanted to commit to.
Yeah, it's a lot of dough. But hey, it's a good situation to be in if you're a Philadelphia sports fan.
Absolutely.
All right, so since we're at the end here, do we want to make predictions for Saturday night?
Sure.
So what do you want me to go down the UFC card? Do fight by fight?
I'll make my predictions for Saturday. TCNJ is going to upset Oswego State at 1:30. That's going to be my prediction.
What's the money line?
And thank God for the Saturday night game, because we play NYU at 3:30 on Sunday. That would have sucked. That would have sucked ass. No, I got the Eagles winning 31-23.
Griff, anything?
Oh, I would say 35-17.
Eagles or Giants?
Eagles.
All right. I'm kind of with Paul. I'm going 31-20.
And the only reason why I think it's that close is because there's still going to be some rust, because the guy's coming back. I don't think Lane Johnson's going to be all that great. And the Giants are game. Like Danny Nichols still stinks. But
they're playing with house money, right? They're a team with nothing to lose.
Yeah, no, they sort of remind me of the 2008 Eagles. But
Minnesota stinks. Stop it. Stop it right now. Anybody who didn't see the Giants win the night game, Minnesota stinks. Kirk Cousins stinks. Dalvin Cook is a good running back. Justin Jefferson is good. TJ Hawkinson is good. But after that, they're not a very good team.
I agree. If
they're not, like, they gave up 78 yards rushing to Daniel Jones, who's not a bad player, but you saw him just continue to take the ball and run.
You're right. He's not a bad player, but he's a bad quarterback.
Correct. And I don't care that he had 300 yards passing. If I'm the Eagles, if I'm betting and you're going to do a parlay this week, you do a Jalen, AJ Brown, and Miles Sanders anytime touchdown. And you know what? Even throwing a Boston Scott touchdown, because that dude scores every time he plays the Giants.
Oh yeah, he's got what, nine touchdowns against
9 career touchdowns in like 8 games.
Yeah. So if Hurts hadn't gotten hurt, this like,
then I would be nervous.
They might put up 40. The only thing that would stop them from putting up 40 would be taking the guys out early, because the game would be over.
And if you go back and you look at that last Giants game, it was a very vanilla offense, very vanilla defense. There was really nothing.
And you weren't allowing Hurts to run himself, because for obvious reasons. Now all the whole playbook's gonna be open. So
right, Avonte Maddox is back, Josh Sweat's back. So
is Maddox back? I thought he was out.
Well, they didn't place him on IR for this specific reason, so he could very well be back. If he was on IR, he would have to miss 4 games, and this would have been the 4th game.
But I'm just happy it was the Giants, to be honest, because I was as much as I think they'll beat Dallas.
It's always Tom Brady in the playoffs.
What's that?
It's always Tom Brady in the playoffs. You can't bet against him.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, I think the Cowboys win tonight. And I just didn't want their first, like, Hurts's first real football game back being against the Cowboys. I wanted one game. If they're going to play the Cowboys, I want it to be the NFC Championship game personally, but that's just me.
All right. Well, that concludes the Football Smack Talk show. So, on a serious note, that does conclude kind of our show. I would bring up the show lineup, but I feel like everything's kind of changed from when that banner was made.
Yeah.
So this is our home, Philly Sports Alliance. There are shows just about every day of the week, I believe. From the aforementioned Philly Smack Talk show, there's the wrestling show that's Escaping Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. There's some flavor for everybody on Philly Sports Alliance. So make sure you like that page so you can get notified whenever another show goes live. Kind of coverage of all four sports. Chris, when does Phillies Talks come back?
I don't know, but the Philly podcast goes on in a half hour.
There you go. So you can, when we end, go grab yourself a drink, go to the bathroom, and then come back on to listen to Chris and Eric.
That's kind of why I had to go out, because these just snap
broke on you.
I don't even know what happened. I got to call and find out why. I'm so
and
aggravated.
Chris, you and Eric will be on CEV as well as PSA.
Yeah, well, not PSA. We'll be on Six Pack.
Okay,
which
so
is
Six Pack's coverage
is a part of PSA.
Division of CEV.
Yeah,
okay,
it's a division of Philly Sports Lines as well.
Okay, so give yourself a half hour to do those things and come back and listen to Chris and Eric talk. I'm assuming all Eagles.
All Eagles. Giants preview.
By the way, I have one more prediction. When we come back on next week, the Flyers will have been 3-1 in their last 4 games. Go ahead.
Did they play TC and you?
What's that?
They played TC 4 times.
Hey, if we could beat
they
an
might as well.
You got one win.
4, I'd take that any day of the week.
That was a compliment.
All right, guys. We'll be back at 7:30 next week. Otherwise, to talk about that big winning streak coming. Oh, yeah. Until then, guys.
Peace.